In a quiet town street, a young black girl faces public humiliation from a white cop whose arrogance turns the air thick with tension. Onlookers freeze, some in silent agreement, others in fear. But behind her trembling hands lies a truth that will shatter his laughter. Your mom? Special forces? The white cop's laugh ripped through the humid afternoon air like a whip. His voice was loud, mocking, sharp enough to make heads turn from across the street. A ripple of chuckles spread among the bystanders, the kind of uneasy laughter that doesn't come from humor, but from the raw force of authority demanding an audience. The officer leaned back slightly, hands on his belt, posture wide and arrogant, his badge glinting in the sun. The girl he mocked, 16, slim, hair tied back in neat braids, stood frozen by the curb. She wore a simple backpack slung over one shoulder and a t-shirt a size too big, her hands gripping the straps until her knuckles whitened. Her eyes darted nervously toward the small crowd gathering around. You hear that, folks? The cop sneered, tilting his head as if the whole street were in on the joke. This little lady says her mama is special forces. Can you believe it? What's next? Your daddy the president? The crowd shifted uneasily. A few men smirked. An older woman frowned but said nothing. No one stepped forward. No one challenged the uniform. The girl swallowed, her throat dry. Her voice was low, barely audible. She is. That only fueled the laughter. The cop bent forward, his face closer now, his smirk wide. Sweetheart, don't lie to me. Special forces? That's real work. Real men. Not storybook fairy tales, he dragged the words, making sure each syllable dripped with disdain. Her chest rose and fell in quick, shallow breaths. She wanted to shrink, to disappear, but her mother's words replayed in her head. When they mock you, don't bow. Just breathe. Just wait. So she stood still. Silent. The officer circled her like a predator toying with prey, his heavy boots crunching against the gravel. The audience followed his every move, their silence complicit. He leaned in again. Tell you what, little soldier's daughter, he said, his voice low, taunting. Why don't you call her up right now? Let's see if Mommy answers from her big, secret base. Maybe she'll parachute down right here, huh? The girl flinched, gripping her backpack tighter. Her phone was in it. She could call. But her heart hammered too hard. Her voice felt trapped in her throat. The officer chuckled again, shaking his head as if the absurdity was too much for him to bear. You kids. Always making up stories. Always reaching for stars you'll never touch. His eyes narrowed, growing sharper. But here's the thing, you don't lie to the law. That's a bad habit. Gasps rippled through the crowd. He had stepped across an invisible line, no longer just mocking but threatening. A boy in the back whispered, Man, leave her alone. But the whisper was swallowed by the weight of silence. The girl's legs trembled. She forced herself to look up, her voice cracking but steady. She's real. She's coming. The officer's smirk faltered for a fraction of a second. Then he barked a laugh again, too loud, too forced this time. Oh, she's coming? What's she gonna do, drop out of the sky in camouflage and save her baby girl? A couple of onlookers chuckled nervously, but most stayed quiet now. The laughter was losing its momentum. Something in the girl's eyes too steady, too certain was unsettling. The cop straightened his uniform and looked around, still playing to his audience. All right then. We'll wait. I'll even roll out the red carpet for this invisible hero of yours. He stretched out his arms, mocking applause. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give it up for the Special Forces fantasy. The girl's breathing slowed. Her hands loosened their grip on the straps. The words came back to her again. Don't bow. Just wait. So she did. Minutes crawled by. The tension thickened, hanging heavy in the late afternoon sun. Every shifting foot, every cough, every sideways glance carried the weight of anticipation. And then distant but unmistakable an engine's roar broke the silence. A black SUV turned the corner sharply, tires biting the asphalt, moving with precision too deliberate to be casual. The crowd's head swiveled. The officer's smirk twitched. He tried to keep his posture casual, but his jaw tightened. The SUV came to a halt right in front of the crowd, its tinted windows glinting. The back door opened slowly. Boots hit the ground, first black, heavy, polished. Then a figure stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, uniform crisp, insignia sharp. The murmurs started immediately. "Wait, she's... Oh my God." The cop's grin slipped entirely now, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. His laugh had died, replaced by something else, the sudden weight of reality pressing against his chest. The girl finally allowed herself a small breath of relief. Her lips moved, barely above a whisper. "She's here." The cop's arrogance, so loud just moments ago, faltered into silence as the figure in uniform stepped closer. And the question lingered in the air. What happens when the lie you laughed at walks right into the room? The crowd fell into silence as the figure stepped out of the black SUV. The sun caught the polished insignia on her chest, and for a moment it felt as though the very air around her stiffened into discipline. The woman was tall, her posture straight as a blade. Her uniform bore the dark green of Special Forces, each patch meticulously placed, her boots moving with deliberate precision. She closed the car door with one firm push and scanned the street with sharp, unwavering eyes. People instinctively made space. No one asked them to. They simply shifted back as if her presence demanded respect. The girl's lips curved into the faintest trembling smile. Her hands, still clutching her backpack straps, finally loosened. The cop, however, forced a laugh. Too quick. Too loud. "Well, look at that. Someone playing dress-up?" He clapped his hands slowly, mockingly. "What's the occasion, Halloween in September?" No one laughed this time. The woman's gaze fixed on him, steady, cold, unblinking. "You think this is a costume?" Her voice was low, calm, controlled, yet it carried through the entire street. The officer shifted slightly but kept his smirk. "Lady, I don't know who you are, but your daughter here thinks you're some kind of hero." "Special Forces, huh?" "That's a big claim." He tugged at his belt, trying to regain dominance. "And in my experience, people who brag about it are usually lying." The words hung in the air, heavy, daring. She stepped closer, her boots striking the pavement with the rhythmic certainty of someone who had walked through war zones. Her daughter straightened unconsciously, as if standing in formation beside her. "I don't brag," she said quietly. "I serve." The murmur started again. A man whispered, "That's real. Look at the patches." Another gasped softly, recognizing the emblem on her shoulder. The cop's jaw tightened. He raised his chin, trying to hold his ground. "All right then, soldier," he sneered, the words soaked with sarcasm. "What's the problem here?" "Your daughter's causing a scene." "I was just keeping the peace." The girl's mother tilted her head, studying him like a hawk watching prey. "Keeping the peace? By mocking a child in public?" Her tone was sharp enough to slice through the thick silence. His face reddened. He shifted his weight but forced another laugh. "Hey, I was just joking around. No harm done. Kids exaggerate, you know how it is." Her eyes narrowed. "I don't joke when it comes to dignity." She took another step closer, now standing directly in front of him. Her presence dwarfed his arrogance, though he was taller. It wasn't about height. It was about weight, the weight of truth pressing down on the face of him, down on the masama, uniform that wasn't earned by cruelty but by sacrifice. The crowd leaned in. People held their breath, sensing the imbalance shifting. The officer tried again, his voice sharper. "Listen, lady, I'm the law here. Don't come marching onto my street, trying to make a scene. You think that uniform scares me? You think your rank means something here?" The woman's jaw clenched slightly, but her eyes remained steady. She didn't flinch, didn't blink. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out a black leather case. With one smooth motion, she flipped it open, revealing a military ID embossed with golden lettering. Gasps echoed. Even those who didn't fully understand the insignias recognized the gravity of what they were seeing. This was no costume. The cop's smirk cracked. His lips twitched as though searching for the next mocking word, but nothing came. His eyes flickered to the ID, then back to her unflinching stare. Still, arrogance clung to him like a drowning man clutching driftwood. Paper and patches, he muttered, voice lower now. Don't mean you run things here. She leaned closer, her words deliberate, precise. I've commanded soldiers twice your size in places you can't pronounce. I've walked through villages where silence meant survival and hesitation meant death. And you think this, she gestured around at the street, the staring crowd, the badge on his chest, makes you powerful? The silence was suffocating. The girl looked up at her mother, her chest swelling with something she hadn't felt moments earlier, pride that burned hot enough to melt the fear inside her. The officer clenched his jaw. He couldn't look weak in front of the crowd. His voice rose again, harsher now, cracking at the edges. I don't care who you are, lady. Out here, I'm in charge. And if you don't like it, you can take it up with the station. Her expression didn't change. Calm, steady, unbreakable. Then maybe, she said softly, we should all go together. The crowd murmured louder now, sensing the shift. A couple of people pulled out their phones, recording quietly, their cameras catching every movement. The cop noticed the phones. His pulse spiked. He tugged at his collar, sweat beginning to bead at his temple. The woman straightened to her full height, her shadow casting long over him in the afternoon sun. Careful with your words, officer, she said evenly. Because one wrong step now, and it's not just me you'll answer to. The air was heavy now, tense with an electricity no one could ignore. The once laughing cop shifted on his feet, his hands still on his belt, but the swagger was gone. His eyes darted not just at the woman in uniform, but at the glowing red dots of camera phones, pointed his way. The crowd had grown larger, edging closer. People leaned in, whispering, "Is that real? She looks official-like, really official. Man, he messed with the wrong family." The cop forced a grin, but it was tight, brittle. "All right, enough of this circus," he barked, his voice sharper than before. "Everybody put your phones away. This isn't some show." Nobody moved. If anything, more cameras rose, defiant little eyes refusing to blink. The people smelled the shift, the power slipping from his grasp. The girl's mother stood perfectly still, her presence commanding without raising her voice. Her calmness made his anger look louder, weaker. She didn't need to shout. She simply existed with a weight that crushed his authority. "Tell them to put their phones away," he snapped at her, desperate. She didn't even glance at the crowd. Her eyes stayed locked on him. Why? Afraid of the truth? A murmur of agreement swept through the bystanders. Someone chuckled under their breath, and the cop's ears burned red. His badge suddenly felt like a flimsy shield rather than a weapon. He tried again, clinging to protocol. "Look, ma'am, I'm just doing my job." "Your daughter was loitering, being disruptive." "Disruptive?" The mother cut in, her tone sharp but measured. "Standing on a street corner, waiting for her ride? That's a crime now?" His mouth opened, then shut. He hadn't expected the interruption, the precision of her words. He tried to recover. "I asked her a simple question. She gave me an attitude." "I can't have that." The woman tilted her head, her eyes narrowing slightly. "And what was that question?" His throat tightened. He looked around, searching for support, but found only recording phones and expectant stares. His earlier laughter echoed in his own mind, now sounding cruel, juvenile. He stumbled. "I asked about her family." "You mocked her," the woman corrected, her voice low but cutting. "In front of strangers." "In front of witnesses." "You tried to humiliate a child for sport," gasps broke out. Even those who'd remained quiet now looked at him differently, no longer a protector of order, but a bully exposed in daylight. The girl's hands trembled at her sides, not from fear this time, but from the overwhelming rush of pride. She watched her mother stand against him like a fortress, her words slicing through his authority as easily as a blade through cloth. The officer squared his shoulders, trying to summon the swagger that had carried him this far. But his voice betrayed him, cracking at the edges. "Lady, I don't need a lecture. I've been wearing this badge for 12 years. I know my job." The mother's eyes flicked down to the badge, then back up. "A badge doesn't make you honorable. Your actions do." That hit harder than he expected. His jaw tightened, a muscle twitching. He could feel the crowd closing in around him, their silence louder than any jeer. He felt cornered, caged in by his own arrogance. "Back off," he growled, his hand brushing the holster on his belt, not drawing, but letting the gesture hang heavy in the air. The crowd gasped, tension spiking instantly. A woman's voice rang out from the back. "Don't you dare." The girl's heart lurched into her throat. Her mother didn't flinch. Not a step back, not a blink. She stood like stone, her voice even lower now, commanding, "Touch that weapon, officer, and you'll regret it." The way she said it, calm, measured, like she had issued orders in far worse places, made his blood run cold. Someone in the crowd muttered, "She's not bluffing." The cop's hand froze. Sweat slid down his temple. He forced his hand back to his belt buckle, pretending as though he'd never intended otherwise. But the damage was done. The crowd had seen it, had recorded it, and in that silence, his authority cracked wide open. The girl's mother leaned just slightly forward, her voice dropping to a tone only he could hear, though everyone strained to catch it. "You think you're in control, but control is already gone. You gave it away the moment you chose mockery over respect." His throat went dry. He wanted to speak, to bark, to reclaim the stage. But his voice betrayed him, trembling on the edge of collapse, and then another sound split the silence. The crackle of a police radio clipped to his shoulder. A dispatcher's voice came through, urgent and clear. "Unit 7, report immediately. Command wants your status. Over." The crowd's eyes shifted from the radio back to him. His face went pale. The crackle of the police radio sliced through the silence like a blade. "Unit 7, report immediately. Command wants your status. Over." Every head turned toward the officer's shoulder. The once laughing man stood frozen, his lips pressed thin, his skin pale beneath the late afternoon sun. The crowd murmured, whispers carrying fast. "They're calling him? Command? What's going on? Why so urgent?" The officer reached up slowly, pressing the button on his radio. His voice, once dripping with arrogance, now trembled ever so slightly. "Unit 7, standing by. Situation under control." Static hissed before the dispatcher's reply came, firmer this time. "Negative. You are to report to command immediately." "Repeat immediately." The crowd's whispers swelled into gasps. The girl watched him, her small hands clutching her backpack again, but this time with wide, curious eyes instead of fear. She glanced at her mother, who hadn't moved an inch. The woman's stare stayed locked on him, her posture as rigid as steel. Her silence was louder than his words, and it rattled him more than the radio call. He cleared his throat, forcing a chuckle that sounded more like a cough. "Looks like my bosses are a little jumpy today. Nothing to worry about, folks." But no one believed him. The tension was too thick, the call too sharp, the timing too perfect that the mother finally spoke, her voice steady, deliberate. "Answer them properly. Don't lie." The cop's jaw clenched. He had been trained to command, not to be commanded, not like this, not in front of a crowd. "I don't take orders from you," he snapped, though his voice lacked its earlier bite. "No," she replied calmly. "You take them from your superiors. And right now, they're waiting." Her words stung, not because they were cruel, but because they were true. The crowd's silence pressed down on him, their cameras still raised like tiny, unblinking witnesses. The radio crackled again, sharper, louder this time. "Unit 7. Report your situation now. Command is waiting. Over." The officer flinched. His hand hovered near the mic but hesitated. His pride screamed at him to ignore it, to prove he was still in charge. But the weight of the uniformed woman in front of him, the crowd behind him, and the relentless voice of his dispatcher left him cornered. Finally, he pressed the button again. His words came slow, careful. "Unit 7, encountering a situation with a civilian." He glanced at the mother, bitterness in his tone. "Claiming military background." The mother's lips tightened into the faintest smirk, though her eyes remained locked. She didn't need to correct him, the dispatcher would. There was a pause. Then the radio replied, firm and cold. "Unit 7, confirm identity of the civilian. Over." The cop's heart thudded. He looked at her, his smirk faltering. "They're asking for your name," he muttered, trying to sound like he was in control. The woman stepped forward, her boots striking the pavement with deliberate weight. She didn't take the radio from him, she didn't need to. Her voice carried straight to it, strong and commanding. "Lieutenant Colonel Naomi Harris, Special Forces Command, Serial 487-91. Confirming identity." The crowd erupted in gasps. Phone zoomed closer, faces lit with awe and disbelief. A name, a rank, a presence that crushed every ounce of doubt. The cop's face drained of color. He couldn't look away, couldn't laugh, couldn't even move. The radio crackled once more, but this time the voice on the other end carried a tone he'd never heard directed at him before. "Respect." "Copy that, Lieutenant Colonel Harris." "Stand by. Command will address directly." "Unit 7, maintain position and comply." "Over. Maintain position and comply." The words hung in the air like a gavel strike. The crowd knew it. The officer knew it. His authority had just been stripped in front of everyone. Girl's chest swelled with pride so powerful it trembled in her bones. She looked at her mother with wide, shining eyes, the fear gone completely now, replaced by something far stronger. The officer's mouth opened, then closed. He fumbled for words that wouldn't come. The badge on his chest felt heavier now, no longer a symbol of power, but of accountability. "Looks like your bosses outrank you too," someone in the crowd muttered, sparking nervous laughter. The officer's ears burned. He wanted to lash out, to bark, to reclaim control, but the eyes, the cameras, the voice from his radio, and the unflinching woman before him chained him in place. The mother took one step closer, her voice low and deliberate. "Now, do you understand who you were laughing at?" His breath hitched. The weight of his arrogance pressed down harder, threatening to crush him from the inside. And then the radio came alive again. Sharper, louder, impossible to ignore. "Unit 7. Command requests you bring both parties to headquarters immediately. Do not delay." The officer's lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line. His radio hissed one last time, sealing the order. "Unit 7, repeat. Bring both parties to headquarters immediately. Do not delay." The crowd held its breath, waiting. For a long moment, the cop didn't move. He just stood there, stiff, his pride battling the command echoing in his ears. But the silence around him was suffocating, every pair of eyes drilling into his back. He had no choice. He exhaled slowly, then barked, "All right, both of you, let's go." But the bark lacked bite. His voice cracked just slightly, betraying the fracture lines spreading through his confidence. The girl clutched her backpack tighter. Her mother's hand brushed lightly against her shoulder, grounding her, guiding her. Naomi Harris didn't look shaken. She walked forward calmly, her boots clicking against the pavement with the rhythm of authority. The officer fell in step beside them, though it looked less like escorting and more like shadowing. His hand hovered awkwardly near his belt, but the swagger was gone. Each step felt heavier, as if his boots were filled with stone. The crowd wasn't done with him. They moved too, following, filming, whispering. What had begun as a small circle of spectators was now a procession, an audience unwilling to let the scene end. "Man, this is crazy. Special Forces right here in town. He's in trouble." You can see it all over his face. The officer tried to ignore the voices, but they clung to him, each word a thorn in his pride. He kept glancing at the phones, at the way every movement was captured, preserved. The girl, walking between her mother and the officer, dared a glance upward. Her mother's face was calm, unreadable. But in her eyes she saw something fierce, a steady flame that made her straighten her shoulders, even as fear still lingered deep inside. Naomi spoke suddenly, her voice cutting through the whispers. "This walk you're taking right now, it isn't about us. It's about you. Every step is a record of how arrogance crumbles when truth stands beside it." The cop's jaw tightened. "Save the speeches, Colonel," he muttered, his words low enough to avoid the crowd but sharp enough for her ears. Her response was immediate, quiet but devastating. "You're not embarrassed because I outrank you. You're embarrassed because you mocked a child. And now the whole town knows." His throat bobbed. He wanted to snap back, to remind her he still had the badge, the law. But the eyes of the people pressed too heavy. He walked faster instead, hoping to outpace the whispers, but the crowd followed relentlessly. Children peeked from shop windows. An old man leaned on his cane, shaking his head. Every corner they passed became a silent judgment, every face another witness. The girl whispered, barely above a breath, "Mom? Are we safe?" Naomi bent her head slightly, her voice soft but steady. "With me, always." The words wrapped around her daughter like armor. They reached the edge of town where the station loomed, a squat brick building with faded paint and an American flag snapping in the breeze. For the first time, the officer felt no relief at its sight. Instead, dread twisted in his gut. As they approached, two other officers stepped outside. Their eyes widened when they saw Naomi, their posture stiffening unconsciously. One of them, a sergeant with salt and pepper hair, whispered under his breath, "Lieutenant Colonel." The cop froze mid-step. His heart sank. They knew her. The sergeant stepped forward quickly, offering a respectful nod. "Ma'am." His tone carried deference rarely heard outside the chain of command. The crowd erupted in whispers again. Some began to live stream, voices hushed but urgent. Even the other cops respect her. "She's the real deal." The officer's mouth went dry. He had thought maybe, just maybe, he could spin this, bury it behind the walls of the station. But the way his colleagues' eyes shifted between him and the colonel told him the walls weren't protection. They were mirrors. That would reflect everything. Naomi stopped at the base of the steps, her daughter at her side. She looked at the officer squarely, her voice calm but resonant. This is where truth catches up with arrogance. The words lingered in his chest, burning. He tried to swallow, but the taste of bile rose in his throat. The sergeant gestured toward the doors. "Ma'am, please, this way." The officer hesitated, his feet refusing to move. The cameras caught it all, his pause, his pale face, his trembling hands, and then the station doors swung wider, revealing a figure inside, an older man in a tailored suit, his expression unreadable, his eyes sharp. He wasn't just another officer. He carried himself like someone above them all. The air felt heavier now, the weight of every insult, every mocking laugh pressing down on the crowd. The officer's smirk had not left his face, but there was a nervous twitch in the way he adjusted his belt. He was still in control, at least he believed so. Yet the world around him had grown quieter, like the silence before a storm. People lingered on the sidewalk, their eyes fixed on the scene. Some had phones in their hands, recording discreetly. Others just stared wide-eyed, afraid but unwilling to look away. There was something magnetic about the young girl's stillness, something that made even strangers stand straighter in quiet solidarity. "You really think you're someone?" The officer sneered, circling her like a predator. His boots clacked against the pavement. "Little girl, you're in the wrong place. Out here, respect is earned. And you," he jabbed a finger toward her chest, "you haven't earned anything." The girl's voice was calm, almost eerily steady. "I don't need your respect," she said softly. "The truth will speak for me." The words weren't loud, but they carried. People at the edge of the crowd exchanged glances. The officer chuckled, masking his unease with mockery. "The truth?" he repeated. "Truth is, you don't matter. Truth is, if I wanted, I could haul you off right now and no one would care." A sharp gasp rippled through the onlookers. The girl didn't flinch. She tilted her head slightly, eyes unblinking. "You should be very careful," she whispered, "about assuming no one cares." Her tone unsettled him. It wasn't defiance in the way he expected. It wasn't loud, reckless, or rebellious. It was too calm, too certain. Behind him, a man whispered to his wife, "She's not afraid." That cop doesn't see it yet, but something's coming. The officer noticed the murmurs. His jaw clenched, his voice rose. "Shut up!" He barked at the crowd, his fingers stabbing the air. "Mind your business. You people don't know anything." But the crowd didn't move. Phones were raised now, no longer hidden. The cop could feel it, eyes everywhere, recording every syllable. The once faceless bystanders had become silent witnesses. their collective gaze tightening the space around him. The girl lowered her eyes briefly, as though praying. Then she lifted her chin again and said clearly, "You're going to regret every word." The cop laughed loudly, the sound brittle. "Regret? You don't scare me. You're just another kid with a big mouth." But his laugh was too forced, and those closest could see the faintest trace of sweat forming at his temple. For the first time, he seemed less like a man in control and more like one desperately holding on to it. "Funny thing about arrogance," an older man in the crowd muttered. "It always collapses faster than it rises." The girl's lips curved into the faintest smile. She didn't look at the officer this time. She looked past him to the edge of the street, where a dark car had just slowed to a stop. Its tinted windows reflected the lights around them, hiding whoever sat inside. The officer didn't notice yet. His voice was still booming, trying to drown out the weight pressing in on him. "You think anyone's coming to save you? No one's walking through that street for you. You're nothing." But the girl's gaze didn't waver from the car. Her eyes lit with quiet recognition. The tinted window of the car began to lower slowly, and the moment the first glimpse of the figure inside appeared, the girl's calm expression transformed into something unshakable, while the cop's arrogance teetered on the edge of collapse. The car's engine rumbled low, its presence commanding silence before a single word was spoken. All eyes, even those who had been nervously glancing away moments ago, turned toward the sleek black vehicle. The tinted window rolled down halfway, revealing nothing but a pair of sharp, watchful eyes. The officer frowned, annoyed by the distraction. He barked at the girl. "What are you staring at?" "Stay focused on me, not some car." But the girl didn't answer. Her lips curled into a knowing smile, the first flicker of emotion she had shown all day. That smile unnerved him far more than her silence had. The car door opened. A hush swept through the crowd as a tall woman stepped out, her movements precise, deliberate, and almost intimidating in their calmness. She wore plain clothes, but there was nothing ordinary about her. Her posture was upright, her stride unwavering. Even before she spoke, authority radiated from her presence. Whispers spread like fire. "Who is she? She looks different. Military? I don't know, but the way she walks." The officer scoffed, trying to reclaim the stage. "And who's this now?" "Another one of your friends coming to mouth off." "This is getting pathetic." The girl's eyes softened as she looked at the woman. "Mom," she whispered. That single word hit the air like a hammer. Several people in the crowd gasped. The officer froze mid-step, his smirk faltering for the first time. He turned sharply toward the woman, narrowing his eyes. "This your mother?" he said with a mocking laugh, though the laugh cracked halfway. "What is she supposed to do? Ground me? Don't tell me this is your backup plan." "Cute." The woman stopped a few feet from him. She said nothing. Her gaze traveled slowly from the girl to the officer, unblinking, steady, and cold. She had the eyes of someone who had seen more than this arrogant man could ever imagine. The silence stretched until the officer grew uncomfortable. He puffed his chest, trying to fill the gap. "Listen, lady," he said, jabbing his finger toward her. "You're stepping into something you don't understand. This is official business, and unless you want trouble, you'd better turn around and walk away." Still, she didn't speak. Her face remained calm, unreadable. Then, with a small motion, she reached into her jacket and pulled out a slim leather wallet. The crowd leaned in, holding their breath. She flipped it open. The gleam of a badge and a military insignia caught the streetlight. Gasps erupted around them. A murmur rippled. "Special Forces? Wait, she's military? Oh my God." The officer's smirk collapsed completely. His eyes darted from the badge to her face, and for the first time, he stumbled over his words. What is this? Some kind of joke?" The woman's voice was low, but it cut through the night like steel. "No joke." Her tone carried the weight of command, the kind that silences a battlefield. She stepped closer, and the officer involuntarily stepped back. The crowd's energy shifted. Phones raised higher now, recording every detail. The balance of power had flipped in an instant, though the officer was still clinging desperately to his crumbling arrogance. Special forces? Someone whispered loudly. That's her mom. No wonder she wasn't afraid. The girl stood tall beside her mother now, her expression calm but proud. The contrast was sharp, dignity and strength on one side, arrogance melting into fear on the other. The officer tried one last time, his voice higher than before, betraying the panic beneath. I don't care who you are. This doesn't change anything. You think a badge scares me? The woman's eyes narrowed slightly, a dangerous glint in them. It's not the badge that should scare you, she said slowly. It's the truth you've already exposed tonight. The officer's breath hitched, as the woman took one deliberate step closer, her eyes locking onto his with the kind of authority that could break a man long before she laid a hand on him. The air was thick, every breath charged with the tension of what was unfolding. The officer's face was pale now, though he tried to mask it with a sneer. His swagger, once towering, had shrunk into something desperate, hollow. The woman's eyes never left him. They were sharp, unrelenting, the kind of eyes that could strip a man bare without a single touch. She spoke again, her voice steady, commanding. State your name and badge number. The officer blinked. For a moment, he didn't move, caught off guard by the sharpness of her demand. Excuse me? He stammered. Name, badge number, now. The words cracked across the street like thunder. The crowd erupted in whispers, phones recording even closer. Everyone knew this wasn't a request. This was a command. The officer puffed out his chest, trying to regain ground. You don't have the right to. I have every right, she cut him off, her tone slicing his excuse clean in half. She took one step forward. You've harassed a minor, abused your authority, and humiliated her in front of witnesses. And now, her eyes flicked toward the recording phones. The entire world is watching. The murmurs grew louder. The crowd wasn't just watching anymore. They were rooting for her, emboldened by her authority. Someone shouted, Answer her. Another voice followed, Give your badge number. The officer's lips trembled. He barked weakly, You people don't tell me what to do. But even as he said it, the power behind his words was gone. It sounded defensive, small. The woman's gaze hardened. You're going to comply, or I'll ensure the first call I make tonight is to internal affairs. Don't test me. A hush fell again. The officer's hands twitched nervously at his belt. Sweat dripped down his temple. For the first time, he looked not like an enforcer of the law, but a man cornered by it. Finally, through clenched teeth, he muttered his name and badge number. It was barely audible, but the crowd caught it. Dozens of phones captured every syllable. The woman nodded slowly, her expression unreadable. Good. Now we have accountability. The girl beside her stood taller, pride shimmering in her eyes. For the first time, she allowed herself a small smile. The officer snarled, his voice breaking under pressure. This isn't over. You think you've humiliated me? You don't know who you're dealing with. The woman tilted her head slightly, her calm composure unshaken. No, she replied coldly. It's you who doesn't know who you're dealing with. You picked the wrong girl to humiliate. And now, the wrong mother to challenge. The crowd roared with murmurs of agreement, some even clapping. The cop's confidence was collapsing in real time, piece by piece, under the weight of her authority and the eyes of the people. One man at the edge of the crowd whispered, He's finished. Doesn't even realize it yet. The woman leaned slightly closer, her voice dropping lower, more dangerous. Every word you said tonight has been recorded. Every insult. Every threat. By tomorrow morning, those recordings will be in the hands of people who will strip that badge from your chest. That's not a warning. That's a promise. The officer's jaw locked. He wanted to speak, to fight back, but nothing came out. The silence that followed was louder than any argument he could have made. The girl's voice broke the silence. Gentle, steady. I told you, she said, her eyes locking on the man who had tried to crush her. The truth would speak for me. The officer turned, his eyes darting between the crowd, the phones, the woman's piercing gaze. His arrogance was in free fall, his grip on power slipping away with every second. The officer's radio crackled suddenly, a voice calling his name, demanding his location. The crowd held its breath as he froze, realizing the moment of reckoning had arrived. The crackle of the radio echoed through the street, cutting through the silence like a blade. The officer froze, his hand twitching near his shoulder mic, unsure whether to respond. Everyone could see it. The mask of confidence was gone. The woman's eyes narrowed. She gestured toward the radio. "Answer it," she commanded. The officer swallowed hard. For a moment, he considered ignoring her, but the weight of dozens of recording phones and the murmuring crowd pressed in on him. Reluctantly, he pressed the button. "This is Officer Daniels," he said. His voice strained at the voice on the other end crackled. "Daniels, we've had multiple calls about a disturbance at your location. Report." The woman stepped forward, her presence towering. "Tell them the truth," she ordered. Daniel's throat worked, his eyes darting between her and the crowd. "It's under control?" he stammered. "Under control?" The woman repeated, her voice sharp with disbelief. She turned her head toward the phone's recording. "You heard him. He calls this abuse of power under control." Gasps erupted from the onlookers. Someone shouted, "Yeah, we heard it." Another voice rose, "We've got it all on video." The officer's hand shook slightly as he released the mic. His composure was disintegrating under the heat of exposure. The woman's voice hardened. "Daniels, I've seen men like you before. Bullies with a badge. You think authority means power. But real authority," she stepped closer, her voice cutting into him, "is accountability." He sneered weakly, but his voice trembled. "You think you're scaring me? You think standing here with some badge from the military makes you the law? This is my world." Her lips curved into a cold smile. "Your world?" She raised her voice so the crowd could hear every word. "Your world is ending tonight. Your arrogance is collapsing in real time. Look around you, Daniels. Every eye, every camera, every witness, they are your jury now." The crowd erupted in murmurs of agreement, some even cheering. The officer's breathing quickened, his chest rising and falling unevenly. The girl, still calm, spoke softly but clearly enough for all to hear. "You laughed at me for being nothing. But you're the one about to lose everything." The words hit him harder than any weapon could. His lips parted, but no sound came out. From the other side of the crowd, a man in a suit stepped forward. His presence commanded instant attention. He held out his ID. "Civilian Oversight Division," he announced. "I was nearby when calls came in. I came to see for myself." Daniel staggered back a step. His face drained of color. No, this isn't what it looks like." The oversight officer raised an eyebrow. "Then you won't mind if I review the footage these citizens have recorded." The crowd immediately surged forward, offering their phones. Videos played aloud, echoing Daniel's insults, his threats, his mockery. His own words hung heavy in the air, undeniable. The woman folded her arms, her gaze still locked on Daniel's. "The truth has spoken." The oversight officer looked at Daniels coldly. "You'll come with me. Internal Affairs will want to hear everything. Effective immediately, you're suspended pending investigation." The crowd roared with approval. Some clapped, others shouted, "Justice!" Phones stayed raised, capturing every second of the downfall. Daniel shook his head violently, his voice cracking. "You can't do this to me. I've served for years. I'm respected." The oversight officer's tone was flat, final. "Respect isn't demanded. It's earned. And you've just shown the entire city who you really are." The woman turned to her daughter, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. The girl's eyes shimmered not with fear, but with quiet pride. As the officer was led away, his shouts echoing in vain, the girl looked at her mother and whispered a single word. "Now?" Her mother's eyes narrowed, and with a calm nod, she signaled that the final truth was about to be revealed. The street was alive with energy phones recording, voices buzzing, justice unfolding in real time. Yet, at the center of it all, there was a strange calm. The girl stood beside her mother, her small frame radiating dignity far beyond her years. Officer Daniels, now pale and restrained, was being ushered toward a patrol car by the oversight officer. His shouts were hollow, desperate, his authority shattered. "You don't know me. You don't know what I've done for this city." The mother's voice carried over him, calm but commanding. "What you've done tonight is all anyone needs to know." The crowd roared with approval. Every cheer was another nail in the coffin of his arrogance, but the girl tugged gently at her mother's sleeve. "Mom," she whispered, her voice soft but urgent. "They still don't know." The woman paused, her eyes meeting her daughter's. For a moment, the tension shifted. The crowd leaned in, sensing that something greater still remained hidden. The oversight officer turned. "Know what?" The woman exhaled slowly, then stepped forward, her presence filling the space. She reached once more into her jacket, this time pulling out a second credential thicker, heavier, carrying the emblem of a unit most civilians had only ever heard about in whispers. The insignia glinted beneath the streetlight. U.S. Army Special Forces. Gasps tore through the crowd. "Special Forces?" one man exclaimed. Another shouted, "She's elite military." The woman's voice was low, resolute. "I've served in places where arrogance like his doesn't survive a single day. I've led missions where silence was deadlier than bullets. And I've returned home only to see men like this abuse the very people they swore to protect." Her words hit harder than any shout could have. The crowd went silent, hanging on every syllable. Even the oversight officer straightened, his respect evident. Daniels thrashed weakly against the man holding him. "She's lying. This is all a show." "Special Forces? You expect me to believe that?" The woman's lips curved into a thin, sharp smile. "You believed I was just another woman in the crowd. You laughed at my daughter for daring to stand tall. And now you can't accept the truth staring you in the face." The girl spoke up, her voice ringing with pride. "You asked who I thought I was. I'm her daughter." That line alone silenced Daniels. His mouth opened, then closed, his voice stolen. The crowd erupted in cheers so loud the street shook with them. Phones caught every second, ensuring this moment would not just echo here, but across the world. The oversight officer turned to the mother. "Ma'am, on behalf of this city, I thank you. Tonight, you didn't just stand for your daughter, you stood for everyone watching." She gave a small nod, her hand resting once more on her daughter's shoulder. "I didn't need thanks. I only needed the truth revealed." The patrol car door slammed as Daniels was shoved inside. His muffled shouts grew faint as the vehicle pulled away, swallowed by the night. His reign of arrogance was over, undone not by violence, but by exposure, by the quiet strength of a girl and the unstoppable authority of her mother. The crowd began to disperse, still buzzing, still filming, still whispering about what they had witnessed. But in the middle of it all, the girl looked up at her mother with wide, shining eyes. "You were watching me the whole time, weren't you?" she asked. Her mother's stern expression softened. She knelt, brushing a hand against her daughter's cheek. "Always, but tonight you didn't need saving. You stood with dignity, even when he tried to strip it from you. I only arrived to remind him and everyone else exactly who you come from." Tears welled in the girl's eyes, but they weren't from fear. They were from pride. She stood straighter, the shadow of the moment already shaping her into someone stronger. The mother rose, her voice steady. "Remember this night, not for the man who tried to humiliate you, but for the truth that silenced him. Never forget dignity is louder than arrogance, and truth lasts longer than fear." The girl nodded, her heart swelling. The crowd behind them had turned into witnesses of not just a downfall, but of a lesson etched into the night, immortalized on every phone screen and carried on every whisper. As the two walked away, mother and daughter side by side, the girl glanced back at the fading patrol car. Her lips curved into a quiet smile as she whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning."